On a quiet farm in Vancouver Island, a kind gesture sparked a journey no one could have imagined. Years later, a mysterious visitor arrives, stirring old memories and unraveling an extraordinary story of fate, friendship, and gratitude. What happens next will change everything. Welcome to our channel, where we share powerful, heart-touching stories that will inspire and move you. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the love. Today's story is one you won't want to miss. Let's dive into the extraordinary journey of a boy named Oliver. On Vancouver Island, where the breeze smelled of fresh grass and the days were filled with the soft sounds of cows grazing, there lived a kind farmer named Mr. Steve. His ranch was his world, spread out over rolling green hills with over 100 cows that roamed the land. Mr. Steve wasn't a rich man, but he was rich in heart, known for his patience and love for his animals. Among the villagers nearby was a boy named Oliver. At just 13 years old, Oliver was a sharp and curious child. But despite his intelligence, Oliver's family was very poor. They barely had enough to put food on the table, let alone send him to school. His parents worked hard but earned little, and the idea of Oliver getting an education seemed like a distant dream. Yet Oliver never let this stop him. He had a hunger to learn, a drive that couldn't be dimmed by his family's poverty. Every day, when he wasn't helping his parents with small chores, he would go to Mr. Steve's ranch to help tend to the cows. He loved the animals and had a natural gift for handling them. Mr. Steve had noticed this in the boy and allowed him to help with the work, not asking for much in return except for a good attitude and a willingness to learn. In exchange, Mr. Steve would sometimes offer Oliver a meal or let him take home some fresh milk for his family. One quiet afternoon, after a long day of watching the cows graze, Oliver felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. He had been thinking about something for days but didn't know how to say it. His heart raced, but he knew this was his only chance. After much hesitation, he gathered his courage and approached Mr. Steve, who was sitting on an old wooden chair near the barn, watching the sunset over the hills. "Mr. Steve," Oliver said, his voice small and shaky. Mr. Steve turned to him, smiling warmly. "What is it, son?" he asked. Oliver swallowed hard, his hands trembling. I need to ask you for something. Something important." Steve's smile faded just a little as he noticed the seriousness in the boy's eyes. "Go on, Oliver," he said gently, encouraging him to continue. "I want to go to school," Oliver began, feeling the words rush out before he could stop them. "But my parents can't afford it. I need $25 to start high school, and they don't have it. I've thought about this for a long time, but there's no other way. I know it's a lot to ask, but without it, I won't be able to continue my education." For a moment, there was silence. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the field. Mr. Steve looked at Oliver, studying the determination in his face. This wasn't just a child asking for money. It was a child asking for a chance at a future. Steve had seen many boys come and go, but something was different about Oliver. He had always noticed how the boy paid close attention to the cows, how he handled them with care, and how he seemed to understand things faster than others. Oliver had potential that might go untapped if he didn't get that chance. Without a word, Mr. Steve reached into the pocket of his old, worn-out coat. He pulled out his wallet, which wasn't thick by any means, but he didn't hesitate. He took out a $25 bill and handed it to Oliver. Oliver's eyes widened in disbelief. He hadn't expected Mr. Steve to give him the money so easily. He had thought there would be questions, or maybe even a gentle refusal. But here it was, in his hand, the key to his future. "Go make me proud, Oliver," Mr. Steve said softly. "I know you can do it." Tears welled up in Oliver's eyes as he clutched the money tightly. "Thank you, Mr. Steve," he whispered. "Thank you so much. I won't let you down." Steve smiled again and nodded. "I know you won't, son. Now go, and remember, education is as important as taking care of these cows." You've got the heart for both." With that, Oliver ran back to his village, the $25 bill still clutched in his hand. His heart was pounding. But this time not from fear, from hope. That day, with the help of a kind farmer, his life was about to change forever. With Mr. Steve's $25 in his hand and hope filling his heart, Oliver enrolled in high school. It wasn't just any ordinary school for him. It was a lifeline, a doorway to a future that had once seemed out of reach. For a boy who had spent most of his life working with cows and helping his parents make ends meet, stepping into a classroom was like entering a new world. Everything felt fresh and exciting, yet challenging at the same time. But Oliver wasn't scared of challenges. From a young age, he had learned that life wasn't easy. He had spent countless hours watching over Mr. Steve's cows, learning the art of patience and attention to detail. It was those very skills that helped him thrive in school. Oliver quickly realized that just like tending to livestock, studying required focus, dedication, and care. His knack for observing every small detail translated into an ability to understand complex subjects, especially numbers and economics. Oliver's teachers took notice of his sharp mind almost immediately. While most of his classmates struggled with math and economics, Oliver excelled. He could see patterns in numbers, predict outcomes, and grasp concepts that left others confused. The same way he had watched over cows grazing in the field, he now watched the flow of money and resources in textbooks. The skills that had come from working on a farm were now helping him soar in the classroom. Despite his growing success, Oliver never forgot where he came from. Every time he solved a difficult equation or aced an exam, he would think back to that day when Mr. Steve had given him $25. He knew that without that money, and the belief behind it, he wouldn't be sitting in a classroom, learning about things that had once seemed like distant dreams. As the years went by, Oliver's hard work paid off. By the time he finished high school, he had not only passed his exams with flying colors, but had also earned himself a scholarship. The University of Alberta recognized his academic brilliance and offered him a full scholarship to study economics. It was a dream come true. Arriving at the University of Alberta felt like stepping into yet another new world. The campus was large and bustling with students from all walks of life. For a boy who had grown up in a poor village, surrounded by cows and green fields, the experience was overwhelming at first. But Oliver knew why he was there. He had a purpose. He had seen how hard farmers like Mr. Steve worked, often struggling to make ends meet. He wanted to find a way to help them. Economics, he believed, was the key. Throughout his university years, Oliver studied hard. He became fascinated with the idea of connecting farmers to investors, realizing that many small farmers lacked the financial backing they needed to grow their businesses. His mind constantly buzzed with ideas on how he could bridge this gap, creating a system that would allow farmers like Mr. Steve to thrive, not just survive. By the time he graduated, Oliver had already drawn up a plan for a multinational business. His idea was simple yet powerful: create a platform where farmers could connect with investors who believed in their work. He called it AgroConnect. The idea quickly caught on. Investors loved the concept of supporting small farms while also making a return on their investment, and farmers were eager for the financial support they so desperately needed. Within a few short years, Oliver's business expanded across multiple countries, becoming a global success. But even with all his newfound success, Oliver never forgot Mr. Steve. The image of the kind farmer handing him $25 on that quiet afternoon remained etched in his memory. Oliver knew that he owed his entire journey to Mr. Steve's simple act of generosity. He often thought about returning to the ranch, but he wanted to wait for the right moment. That moment came 25 years later. After establishing his business and ensuring its success, Oliver decided it was time to give back. He wanted to repay Mr. Steve, not just with words of gratitude, but with something that could truly make a difference. So he packed his bags and made the journey back to Vancouver Island, where it all began. As he approached the familiar hills of the ranch, his heart raced with excitement and nerves. It had been so long. Would Mr. Steve even recognize him? What would he say? Little did Oliver know, the man who had once given him $25 would soon receive the surprise of a lifetime. The sky over Vancouver Island was a deep gray as thick clouds gathered, threatening rain. The soft hum of cattle grazing echoed across the fields, just like it had 25 years ago. But inside his old farmhouse, Mr. Steve was oblivious to the coming storm. He sat at his wooden kitchen table, sipping tea, his eyes tired but peaceful as they wandered out the window to the land he had worked so hard to maintain over the years. The ranch had aged, much like him. Some of the fences were leaning, the barns needed repairs, and the herd wasn't as large as it once was. Though his heart still belonged to the land and the animals, the years had not been kind to him physically. He didn't have the strength he once did, and managing the ranch on his own had become more difficult. But still, he persevered. Just as he lifted his cup to his lips, a knock echoed through the quiet house. Mr. Steve glanced at the clock. He wasn't expecting anyone. Visitors were rare these days. Curious, he set down his tea and made his way to the door, his boots creaking on the old wooden floorboards. When he opened the door, he found a tall, well-dressed man standing on the porch. His suit was sharp, his shoes polished, and his face wore a broad smile. There was something about the man that tugged at the back of Steve's memory, but he couldn't place him. "Mr. Steve?" the man asked, his voice warm and familiar. Steve nodded cautiously. "That's me. Who's asking?" The man chuckled softly, his eyes lighting up with recognition. "It's me, Oliver," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Do you remember me?" Steve's mind raced. Oliver? The name sounded familiar. But could this man really be the same boy he had given $25 to all those years ago? He studied the man's face more closely, and slowly, the pieces fell into place. The boy who had worked on his ranch, the one who had begged for money to go to school. Could it really be him? Oliver? Steve's voice was barely a whisper, his eyes wide with surprise. "Is that really you?" Oliver's smile widened. "Yes, it's me. It's been a long time." Steve blinked, still trying to wrap his mind around what he was seeing. "You've changed so much," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Look at you, all grown up and dressed like a businessman." Oliver laughed, his eyes soft with gratitude. "And it's all thanks to you, Mr. Steve," he said. "I wouldn't be where I am today without your help." Steve's heart swelled with emotion, but he was still confused. "What do you mean?" he asked, stepping aside to let Oliver inside. "What have you been up to all these years?" As they sat down at the same kitchen table where Steve had once given Oliver that $25, Oliver began to tell this story. He spoke about how that small act of kindness had changed everything, how it had allowed him to go to high school, then earn a scholarship to study economics at the University of Alberta. He explained how his studies had inspired him to start his own business, AgroConnect, which connected farmers with investors across the globe. His company had grown into a multinational enterprise, helping farmers from all over secure the funds they needed to thrive. Steve listened, speechless. He couldn't believe that the little boy he had once helped was now a millionaire, running a global business that was making a real difference in the world. But Oliver wasn't done. "I didn't just come here to tell you my story, Mr. Steve," he said, leaning forward. "I came back to give you something in return for what you did for me." Steve frowned, shaking his head. "Oliver, I don't need anything. I just did what any decent person would have done." Oliver smiled softly. "I know you didn't do it expecting anything in return. That's why I want to give something back. I've been thinking about it for years, and now that I'm in a position to help, I want to partner with you." Steve blinked, confused. "Partner with me? What do you mean?" Oliver's face lit up with excitement. "I want to rebuild your ranch, Mr. Steve," he said. "I want to bring in investors, fix the barns, expand the herd, and make this ranch better than it's ever been. You gave me a future when I had nothing. Now I want to help you create something amazing here. We'll be partners, just like we were when I was a boy." Steve sat back in his chair stunned. He had expected a simple visit, maybe a thank you, but this was more than he could have ever imagined. Tears welled up in his eyes as he looked at the man sitting across from him. I don't know what to say, Oliver," Steve said, his voice trembling. "This is unbelievable." Oliver reached across the table and placed his hand on Steve's. "You don't have to say anything, Mr. Steve. You changed my life with a simple act of kindness. Now, it's my turn to change yours." Months had passed since that unforgettable day when Oliver had knocked on Mr. Steve's door. The quiet ranch, once worn and weathered, was now a bustling hub of activity. Investors had poured in, and Oliver's vision for the future of the farm was taking shape. The sounds of hammers pounding nails, tractors rumbling, and new fences going up filled the air as the ranch transformed before Steve's very eyes. Mr. Steve, still adjusting to all the changes, stood on the porch of his newly renovated house, looking out over the land. The old, sagging barns were now replaced with state-of-the-art facilities. The pasture, once sparse and unkempt, was now a sprawling green field, perfectly fenced and ready for a larger herd. The cows, too, seemed to sense the new energy. They grazed contentedly, their glossy coats a testament to the improved conditions. Steve still couldn't believe how quickly everything had changed. It felt like only yesterday that Oliver had been a hungry boy at his gate, asking for $25 to start high school. Now that same boy had returned, not just to thank him, but to change his life forever. Oliver had made sure that Steve was involved every step of the way. Though he had offered to handle everything, he knew how much the ranch meant to Steve. The older man still woke up early every morning, just as he had for years, but now there was an excitement in his step, a renewed purpose. He worked alongside the new team Oliver had brought in, learning about the latest techniques in livestock management and farming technologies. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the ranch in golden light, Oliver arrived with more good news. He parked his sleek car near the barn and strode up the gravel path, a wide grin on his face. Steve, who was fixing a gate near the entrance, looked up and waved. "Mr. Steve, you won't believe what I've just lined up," Oliver said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "I've secured a partnership with one of the largest agricultural investors in North America. They're interested in expanding our operations and even bringing in cutting-edge equipment to make this ranch the most efficient in the region." Steve, wiping his hands on his jeans, could only shake his head in awe. "Oliver, I don't know what to say. This place, it's nothing like it used to be." Oliver smiled warmly. "That's the point, Mr. Steve. This is only the beginning. We're just getting started." As they walked the ranch together, Steve marveled at how things had come full circle. He had always worked hard to keep his ranch afloat, but now, with Oliver's help, he saw what it could become. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving, building a legacy that would last for generations. The new partnership wasn't just about business, it was personal. Oliver made sure that Steve was treated not as an old ranch hand, but as an equal partner in the venture. They discussed plans to expand the herd, implement sustainable farming practices, and even train local youth in livestock management. Steve found himself energized by the work, excited by the prospect of teaching the next generation of farmers. But the most touching part of it all was Oliver's respect for Steve's experience. Despite his success and wealth, Oliver never forgot who had helped him start his journey. He regularly sought Steve's advice, often saying, "You taught me everything I know about hard work and paying attention to the small things. This ranch wouldn't be what it is without you." One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, Steve and Oliver sat on the porch, watching the cows graze. There was a comfortable silence between them, the kind that comes from years of shared history and mutual respect. Steve broke the silence, his voice soft but full of gratitude. I've had this ranch for over 40 years, Oliver. I've seen hard times, and I've seen good times, but never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd see something like this. Oliver turned to him, his face filled with warmth. None of this would have happened without you, Mr. Steve. You gave me the $25 when I needed it the most. You believed in me when I was just a kid with nothing. I'm just returning the favor. Steve smiled, his eyes misting over. I didn't realize then that I was giving you so much more than money. But look at you now. You've built something incredible, and you've brought me along for the ride. Oliver chuckled softly. That's because we're partners, Mr. Steve. We always have been. As they sat together, the ranch before them a testament to hard work, kindness, and the power of paying it forward, Steve realized that this was more than just a business success. It was a story of redemption, gratitude, and the bond between two unlikely friends who had changed each other's lives forever. And in the cool evening air, with the cows grazing peacefully in the fields, the ranch felt more like home than ever before. Thank you for watching. We hope this story of kindness and perseverance inspired you as much as it did us. Stay tuned for more captivating tales, and remember, even the smallest actions can lead to incredible outcomes. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like and share the video. Until next time, take care.